you can't afford to make mistakes in a nuclear submarine. One, it was hugely expensive. It was really almost a strategic asset. It wasn't quite a strategic asset, but it was a very powerful warship. So we had to take more care. Whereas the diesel submarine is a bit like driving a second-hand car. A little dent here, a little dent there, not too much. A brand new Range Rover with leather seats, you really need to be careful with it. And it was in Spartan that I first became engaged in Cold War activities, right? Spartan, the nuclear flotilla, or nuclear submarines, in the 70s and through the 80s and into the 90s, which is when my career ended when I retired from the Navy, were engaged in the Cold War. We were heavily engaged in the Cold War. There was a phrase that one of our admirals used: we were confronting tomorrow's enemy today. What was then Soviet Russia had built ballistic missile carrying submarines post the Cuban Missile Crisis, where they had tried to actually physically put missiles on land space close to America. They realized they couldn't do that. They lost that particular strategic move. So they decided to put their ballistic missiles into submarines, but in order to get within range of America, they had to come into the Atlantic. So to counter that move, the West, the US and Britain and France built their own ballistic submarines, but we also built our own hunter-killer submarines, SSN, ships of personal nuclear. And those hunter-killer submarines had four prime roles. The prime role was to protect UK's deterrent submarines, to make sure nobody else was getting close to them. Secondary role was to go off and find the enemy, in inverted commas, but the Soviet Russian submarines, primarily their ballistic missile firing submarines, but also their equivalent to us, hunter-killers. Our third role was to carry out intelligence operations, gather intelligence on a potential enemy. And our fourth role was to train up to land special forces on enemy shores, should that be required. I took part in many Role 1, Role 2, so protecting the SSBNs and countering the Soviet submarine force. Spartan first encounter, we were fitted with a new sonar, it gave us much longer ranges. We went out into the Atlantic and we found two Soviet submarines, and we started trying to track them using this new technology. We managed to stay in contact with them for about 2 or 3 days. In the end, we made a tactical error in that they discovered we were there, and they opened up on their active sonar, and it was very obvious they knew we were there. We hightailed it, went deep, went fast, and rushed off in one direction.